so we're talking about the creating a pull plan. And I want to say that there are some really key steps. Now, there's more to this, meaning like I'm not the end all be all expert about pull planning, but I will say that these steps have been pretty true for me. So the first thing is conditions of satisfaction. And when I talk about conditions, and everybody can ask questions as we go, no big deal, but conditions of satisfaction, if I was to actually Google that, let me see what comes up. And maybe I'll just type in construction. So, is the criteria that define what success means. They're used to guide decision-making and align the team around project priorities. On the project level, there can be many types of conditions of satisfaction, but there generally should always be a measure on safety, budget, quality, and schedule. So I'm just going to copy this definition actually in here. So for conditions of satisfaction, that means if we're doing a pull plan, what would success look like for this pull plan? So usually when we are beginning a pull plan, the conditions of satisfaction would be like, okay, we need to meet this certain deadline. We're going to pull to this key milestone. I want it high level. I want it low level. Basically, what would make this a success if we did it this way? So what I'll do is I'll put just a little text box over here, the COS. So if you have a pull plan, just here are some examples, right? Okay, so conditions of satisfaction, we want to pull to the milestone. And for those of you who've been through the takt training, we cover this in quite a bit of detail. But for the milestone, we want to make sure that ready to rock, or not rock, ready for sheetrock, whatever sheetrock, chipboard, whatever. So that's the milestone. This pull plan, we want it to be fairly high level because it's really the sequence only. We don't need to get too detailed. We want to start it after reshore removal on the floor. Okay. One of the biggest things that we want to do with this pull plan is we want to validate the milestone duration. And we want to check the sequence and time allotted for inspections, meaning there's got to be a purpose. So these are just, examples. And the reason that we want to have a condition, well, let me ask y'all a question. Why would we want to start out a pull plan by saying, here's what we want to do with this? Why would that be important to identify that before a pull plan? Any thoughts?
Well, I'm assuming so that people know what they're doing before they get there. I mean, what we plan on doing is sending out criteria and probably our takt plan and really explain to them what the flow of work is. And we have cards that we're making up for them to fill out for their activities for each area, durations and probable manpower and material needs and any procurement issues. So that I think that's why you need to have those milestones out there and where you're starting from.
I like that a lot. I don't know what exact homework or assignment or like prerequisite you're actually going to pull out there and give them. But this was a neat example. Boy, I can't remember who sent this to me. But this was back in the day, we were working with a really neat design team, and they were sending out this homework ahead of a design pull plan. And you can do it in a multiple, just different formats. But what people would do is actually think about their sequence in advance. And I thought that was really nice. So to your point, right? In order to even fill out this template, right, we need to have the project name, the phase, the disciplines, right? And we need to make sure that we identify the conditions of satisfaction. So I don't know if you can see that right here, but the deliverables, conditions of satisfaction. So this one was for design. So they had architect, structural, mechanical. And what they would do is they would plug in the milestone, the last activity, and they would literally work backwards. And once they entered in something here, like for A or Z, what they would do is they would say, what is A1? What are the things that I need from somebody else? What is A2? What do I need from somebody else? What is A3? Then these numbers would plug down here into this timeline, and all of their stickies would be developed ahead of time. So I really think that's pretty neat. So the second one is, once you've identified your conditions of satisfaction, right? Ryan listed that. You send out homework for participants to prepare. And the homework should really allow them to think about their activities, allow them to prepare their stickies or tags, whatever you want to call them, understand their needs, and I'll say needs, constraints, I would say predecessors, whatever you want to call them. Okay. And so that's what needs to be done. So Ryan, did I get that right? That's the same thing you do. Basically, you make sure that there's a homework assignment out ahead of time, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I love that. So that's the second thing. So if you've clearly identified, hey, this is what we're doing, to where there isn't any ambiguity about, hey, when people show up in the room, they know what they're doing, right? Then you're already off to a pretty good start. So that's the second step, conditions of satisfaction, and then the homework. The other thing is we go right into identifying milestones. So if we know what the milestones are, we can be really successful. So let me go ahead and plug in a sticky over here in this pull plan. And boy, I'm going to have to figure out, oh, there we go. I'll do the diagonal sticky. Boom, baby. Look at, I'm already super successful here. So in this sticky, this will be ready for sheetrock. And let me actually mute somebody. Somebody's hitting something. Let's mute you. Let's mute you. Okay, there we go. I'll have to edit that out for you. Anyway, so sheetrock. So ready to sheetrock. Anybody can unmute, but then mute yourself back when we're done. Sheetrock. Okay, so what would be, is that all I need from a milestone standpoint, if I have the milestones? Anybody have any thoughts there? Is that all we need to know? So if
that's all. If that's the only milestone that your pull session's going to.
Correct. And I think so you're spot on. The other thing that you could add as a voluntary type thing is, what is the start milestone? Meaning, what are you pulling back towards? And this would be reshores removed from floor, right? And then what you're wanting to do is create a sequence between those two milestones. So for the milestones, and you all tell me if there's anything that you'd like to add. For the milestones, I would suggest that we have the start, or no. We'll do it by priority. The end milestone and then the start milestone. Okay, so there we go.
The only thing I'd put in there too is, I guess you could call it a milestone, specific constraints. Like I'm gonna have to deal with health department, and we're gonna have to schedule those guys out 6-8 weeks. So those are going to be critical dates to hit.
I totally agree. I think that's fantastic. So if you have your constraints, so let me just go ahead and plug that in. So I'll just write, constraint number 1. And I really like the terminology of constraint for something that's something that you really can't move, and the term roadblock from for things that we can remove out ahead of us. So I love that terminology. I love the way that you use that. Okay, so there we go. So we have some milestones. This one could be up here just on the top. It could be at the bottom. It could be wherever. It could be at the end. But basically, as long as we tie those together in the sequence, we're good to go. Okay, the other thing is we need to identify And you can do this either way. I would say sticky colors. I call them stickies because that's when I Google it, that's what I order, Post-it notes, stickies. So identify sticky colors and trades. So if I'm about to start my pull plan up here, let me do a yellow, let me do a red, let me do a blue, and I'm going to ask you all on the phone. Did I move my blue over here? That's funny. I'm going to ask you all who I should assign these folks to. Let me do maybe a dark blue, and what am I missing? Probably a yellow. Okay, so what I'll do somewhere on my board, if I'm doing this virtually or in person, and I'll have all this set up ahead of time, right? How do I ungroup that? Okay, there we go. Boy, I'm fast at this. Okay, so we want to ungroup that. Tell me what you want these colors, these stickies to be for each trade, if you don't mind. I'll just go ahead and put it down here. So this is for a general interiors medical office building. What would I do as orange? Would this be framing and backing? Okay, what do we want red to be?
Insulation.
Okay.
Oh, I guess we're missing MEPs.
Why don't we start with MEPs first and label them that way,
Yeah.
and I'll add some of the other ones. All right, so what do you want red to be?
MEP.
Okay, so that would probably be electrical, and then blue would probably be plumbing. We could probably do the dark blue as mechanical piping. Okay, probably we could do this one as ductwork, right? Or HVAC. Okay, what other trades would you want on here, Ryan?
Insulation.
Insulation, so I'll give them a color here because they're a separate trade. Okay, let's just start out with that as an example, right? So insulation. The other thing that I would do is immediately get a sticky format. And if you're doing it virtually, you'll have this look a little bit different. So like if we're doing it virtually, then you have to follow the sticky format on Miro or Mural or Hoilu or whatever. But, let's just say, worker count, right? And then maybe there's a / duration. Maybe there's a / activity / and then you would have need 1, need 2, need 3, right? You would get a sticky format that everybody could follow, right? So let me actually do one if we weren't.
Would you not want to make each sticky note whatever your wagon duration is going to be?
So I'll actually go to a blog post. Let's pause that for just a minute. I want to come back to that with your permission. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. So, because I think you bring up a good point. If you're doing this actually in person, and let me go ahead and format this to where I can draw. If you're doing this in person, then what you could do is just draw, hey, my box up here at the top left is my duration. My box on the top right is my, worker count duration. This one in the middle is my activity. And then this one, these are my needs down here at the bottom. So basically you would just go ahead and make sure that you line that out. So worker counts, duration, okay, activity, and then the needs. Now, something that's really neat here that I learned, and I haven't found a better way to do this since, there might be one, but if you have the needs, so need 1, and maybe there's multiple, so I'll just put need 1, need 2. Some people call them constraints, some people call them predecessors, whatever you want to call them. But this is the activity, this is how many people, this is how long it's going to take. You already know who's doing it by what color it is, right? And those are the needs. You have a sticky format. What I like to do is to have a little box in here near each need. And what that means is if I If I copy this and move that up here, if I have a box near this need, let me make it a little bit smaller. Then I can check it off as we go. What I mean by that is if I have a first sticky down here at the bottom that's going ahead of my milestone, and I'm like, hey, I have a need, and I asked another contractor to come up and give me a sticky, and it fulfills that need, I can automatically, and let's just say that maybe that's, well, I'll just leave it the right color right now, or the same color right now, but let's just say that those two stickies, which correlated right here, were placed on the board, and that those needs down there were satisfied by those stickies. Then I can come down here and literally just X these off. And as I see that these needs down here are X'd off, then I know, okay, this one's done. The person that just put this sticky up can go sit down. And now the person that put that sticky up can ask for what they need, and you just start populating it to the left. And the reason that that's impactful, in my opinion, is because it allows you to know that the sequence is being built in a complete manner. Meaning once you're done checking off those little need boxes, you know that you've exhausted your sequence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Perfect. All right. So once you've identified the sticky colors, you identify the sticky format, right? And then the other thing that I would do 100% is to come up with the pull planning rules, or we'll just say guidelines. And so I need everybody to unmute right now, please, if you don't mind, and help me out with this. So there are people on this meeting, and like I said, please unmute, that have done a pull plan before. I'm just going to list out the guidelines for how to do this pull plan, and I'll tell you why this is important. If I was a new superintendent or a new PM or somebody in the lean industry, but in the construction industry, I would be like, ooh, I don't want to do my first pull plan because that's kind of nerve wracking. Some people wouldn't be afraid, but a lot of people are, right? So if somebody's a little bit nervous, we want to reduce that stress and make them unnervous. And one of the things that can make somebody nervous is if they're like, ooh, some of these trade partners or designers have done this before. I don't want to get up here and look like an idiot. So the way to get up there and not look like an idiot is to make sure that everybody creates the guidelines together. So I'll just give you an example of one or two, and then I want the rest of you to help me with this. So one person speak at a time. Okay. No touching other people's stickies. Okay. You all go and start speaking up, and I'll add them in here. What are some other guidelines for running a really good pull plan?
Follow the process.
Okay, follow the process. And so the process would be to start with the last activity. Okay, that person describe their task, their activity, and then that person explain what they need. That person ask for other trades or disciplines, I'll just say trades or disciplines, to add stickies that meet the needs. And then when needs are met, that person may back away or sit down. I love that. Whoever said follow the process, I love that. What else? What are some other rules or guidelines? One is if you have a roadblock, turn your sticky diagonally. Okay, anyone else? Talk person to person. Make commitments. Truly collaborate and listen. That sounds like a Vanilla Ice song. Any rules that I'm missing here? So let's dig deep. Remember,
they need to have the right people in the room. Like when you send your stuff out ahead of time, you don't need the estimator show up. You need the head superintendent or the head foreman or whatever. You need the right people in the room to get it going.
Okay, perfect. Another thing that I would say is that once the backward pass, no, the back pass, no. Once the pull is done, do a forward pass to identify concurrent activities and optimize the sequence. Okay, right? Anything else that I'm missing? Just one last check. Let's all just sit here for a minute. And if somebody's watching this video later, ask yourself, is there anything we're missing? We have the start and end milestones. We have the activities. We know the format. We know the constraints. We're speaking up for what we need. One person speaks at a time. Nobody touches each other's stickies. We follow the process. If you have a roadblock, turn it diagonally. Talk to person, make commitments, truly collaborate, like Vanilla Ice said. Have the right people in the room. Do a forward pass. I think that's generally it. So going once, going twice, and done. Okay, so now let me ask you a question. I miss maybe more of a rhetorical question, but if you go into this pull plan now, and I'll just simulate with generic stickies because we don't have time for me to populate a full sequence here, but if we, oops, yeah, there we go. If we started to populate a full pull plan based on those guidelines and people started to interact and you followed the rules, could you as a facilitator feel like you could be successful with this process? And you don't have to answer. The question is, and let me say it again, is that if you sent out the conditions of satisfaction, everyone's on the same page. Everyone had time before they got there to plan and do their homework, right? Once the homework was done and they arrived, you started the meeting by then saying, here's the stickies and here's how we're going to do this work. Let me move this up. All right, so I can get a complete outline. Okay, so right here, these are the sticky colors. This is the format virtually. This is the format if we do it in person. So I'll just go ahead and move that from here. Okay, these are the milestones. And so I can actually go from this one right here. These are the milestones, so everybody knows what we're pulling to. These are the constraints, right? This is the process that we're going to follow. One person starts, and then we'll work backwards from there. And then we did that according to the pull planning guidelines. Do you feel like you could be successful and not embarrassed and not sheepish when doing a pull plan? And I hope the answer is yes. So that's kind of the backdrop and the process 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then basically you let everybody go through and do their sequence. Ooh, this is going to be a good video. All right, hold on a minute. So they go back and they do their sequence. And then once they've done it and you've exhausted your sequence, and real quick, let me quiz everybody. How do you know you've exhausted the sequence?
Nobody has any stickies.
When nobody has any stickies and these little boxes here are checked, which means that everybody's needs have been met, right? If you have a box that's unchecked, that means the sticky hasn't been put up on the board yet that you need. So if this last activity over here, and let me just go ahead and copy one, and let's assume this is the last activity. And just for formatting and authenticity's sake, I'll go ahead and make that a different color. Pull that back. If you see that these two boxes have an X in them and everything else in between has a box with an X in them, then you know you've exhausted your sequence. Now, when you go forward and you do your forward pass, you're like, yep, this happens after this. Okay, yeah, this activity happens after this. Oh, wait a minute. This one can actually be concurrent, right? Then you can start to, then you can start to look at optimization and say, all right, some of these are concurrent. Yep, these go that way. Yep. These two, that's exactly right. We already knew that those two can run concurrent. This one is actually, we listed it as a part of the sequence. But actually that one doesn't have to be. That's really just kind of a backlog item. So that could be put down into our workable backlog. It does need to be done before the actual end. So I'll put a tie right there, and now you have a complete sequence. What we've shown here in the middle was an optimization, meaning because we could see that there was a way to do concurrent work, we've optimized that and we can go a little bit faster. So I'll just say wait, where's my text? Okay, I'll just do this. We've optimized the sequence by going forward. And remember, and Felipe, engineer, says this all the time, if you don't gain time, and let me just go ahead and put that in here in text. If you do not gain time in last planner system or takt planning, you're doing it wrong. Oh, sorry. You are doing it wrong. I'll say in last planner, I'll just say this so Felipe doesn't get mad. Scrum, last planner, or takt planning, you're doing it wrong. So that means you really do want to look for these optimizations, and what you're targeting is to find a way to create a sequence where this tag isn't before the actual start milestone, right? Did somebody have something to say? Go ahead. Okay, maybe somebody's just unmuted. Go ahead. So I'm looking at the chat here. Okay, yeah, Reed had to jump off. So any questions about pull planning?
Hey, Jason, what's the benefit of going backwards versus forwards?
Forward, we're not. So when you run forward, we're not thinking about needs. So when you go backwards and you force your mind to when you go backwards and you force your mind to think, this is the last activity and these are my needs, then you are in more of a roadblock removal mentality. What I mean by that is there's less of a chance that you finish the pull plan without actually scheduling an activity that will be crucial for a future activity, meaning it ferrets out roadblocks better, because instead of just saying, hey, starting from left to right, this is what we're going to do, and possibly forgetting to take care of a predecessor activity for a future activity, you're going backwards and you're starting with, and these activities are populating based on what needs to happen. And so if you have a sequence that's complete based on people's needs, then there's less of a chance that you have a sequence that's incomplete. So that's one. The other thing is, we're getting into the mindset of pull. And this is a little bit difficult to explain on the huddle board here, but there's a couple of different concepts, right? Flow, pull, and push. When we are, and actually there, you all know, and I've made no secret about the fact that these are in order, right? When you look back at what Toyota did in their factories, they flowed first, they pulled second, and they pushed only when they had to, but they attempted to do it not at all. So actually, I think I might have a really good way to explain this right here. So your takt plan on the project site, in a large measure, creates the flow schedule. So if you, and I'll just symbolize that in stickies, okay? And this might go back to your comment, Ryan, about, hey, what about these being packaged in the takt wagons? So these are the takt plan really creates the backbone, your rhythm on a takt time. Everybody agree with that? Okay, so if nobody disagrees, I'll say that. Now, so this really is a flow system. Your takt, this is a flow system. And most of the time, our takt plans look like this, where they have different phases and they flow in that direction, right? So everybody can agree on that. Your takt is a flow system. Now, how do we introduce the concept of pull and pull planning into the system? So this would be a need, or let me actually get more specific. This could be an RFI answer, or this could be a piece of material. It could be I don't know, it could be a piece of equipment that we have to have ordered. So the concepts of flow and pull. So flow really is the takted time rhythm by area. And let me see if I can make that bigger. Did that get bigger? A little bit bigger. Anyway, let me see if I can. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that's the takted flow. But when we talk about pull, what we're talking about is pulling all of the other needs towards that flowed rhythm. So what I'm talking about is that the material and I'll just use different arrows here. So whatever it may be, and I'm just using these as examples, whatever it may be, to get materials, information, manpower, whatever the case may be, onto the takted flow, we are pulling, meaning we are getting the things that we need just in time to make it work. We are pulling these ancillary items to the takted flow. And I don't know if that makes here, there, this won't move for some reason. All right, 1 second, everybody. I just got to draw this as we go. All right, so equipment, RFI, material, maybe one more example of that would be a specific crew, right? So the concept of pull is to say, if we have a takted flow, what items do we need to keep that takted flow? And we're going to pull, which means that we bring them in at the right time to support the flow of the project when the customer needs it and not before, so that we support this flow. So this concept of takt is really about flow. This concept of bringing and aligning all of our other systems on the project site is pull. And push is when somebody would like start to slam activities on top of each other, and we don't do that. So flow, pull. When you do a pull plan, what you're doing is you're getting in that mindset to where instead of doing this activity like way over here out in the front, like super early, we're looking at it from a pull standpoint when it's needed just in time, right? So the sequence is built backwards, because if we start to bring our materials instead of just in time ahead of the takted flow, we start to bring them out here with which a lot of people are doing right now with COVID-19. Then you have that excess inventory, you have people tripping over things on site. So instead of doing that, let's actually look at it from the end backwards. When do we need it? Just in time, not too early, okay? Even if you have to order all of the materials and put them into like a bonded storage facility or a supermarket or some laydown yard that's not in the way of everybody, you still want that material just in time in the area. Otherwise it's going to be logistically in the way of work. And so going backwards not only makes sure that everybody gets what they need, but it also targets the right sequence and the right start time to where each of these needs aligned with the takted flow are only there just in time. Did that make any sense?
Yeah.
You're like, no, that made no sense. If it didn't, I apologize. My point is that when we, and I'll just tell you, like in a CPM system, right? It's like, hey, just get everything here now. And the program itself pushes everything to the left and scrunches it together. That's an official term in case you want to know. It scrunches it together, and it will have you ordering and doing things before you actually need to do it. And by actually working backwards, we are looking at and understanding when we would actually need to do that activity, not sooner, okay? And if we have to order something like material where maybe we have the crews, maybe we have the RFIs, maybe we have the equipment, but the material is hard to get right now. So instead of ordering it just in time, maybe I order it earlier, but so I'll put it in a supermarket or a laydown yard or a bonded storage area, and I'll do that order earlier on, but I will not mobilize it to the site until I actually need it. And pull planning allows us to identify the right date for that. Does that make sense? So right now, this panic around COVID-19 where everybody's ordering everything and they're like, we have to do it. Well, okay, if we have to play the game and do that, that's fine. More power to you. However, we don't bring it on site. So what is the exact date that we need to bring this on site and actually mobilize it on the on-site logistics? Going backwards will help you identify that date. Any other questions about pull planning? If not, let me just do a summary and I'll close this down. Number one, identify your conditions of satisfaction. Number 2, send out the homework just like Ryan does. Number 3, identify your milestones. Number 4, identify your sticky colors and who's in charge of what, and that you have those stickies. Number 5, identify your sticky format. And number 6, and most important, is that you have to set the guidelines. People will be nervous and hem-haw around and not know what they're doing if you don't set the guidelines together. So you could have somebody that's been doing pool planning for 15 years, and it's not a big deal because they've just told you what rules they need to follow. So halfway through, if they're like, you know, hey, this isn't how I'm used to doing pool planning, you should do this, that, you'd be like, bro, I love you. We made the rules together. Now let's do this pool plan together. There's 2 things that reduce chaos with pool planning, because pool planning is hard. I don't care what anybody says. It is a hard process. So there's 2 ways to make it endurable. And the 2 ways are to follow the checkbox system. Sorry. The checkbox system. And the other one is to follow the guidelines. So usually, and there's this really famous pool planning video that's on YouTube that I think is absolutely ridiculous, where he's like, we're going to simulate a pool planning today. Here are your stickies. Everybody go. And then everybody just starts going up, putting stickies all over the place, and it's like complete chaos. Well, that's not the way to do that. I mean, people will leave that meeting being like, oh my gosh, that was stupid. So the way to make it not chaos is to follow the checkbox system and to follow the guidelines. And if you follow that, you'll be in a nice rhythm. Does that make sense, everybody? Somebody say yes so I don't look stupid.
I love it, Jason. Makes sense.